Hello, everybody. It's great to be here today at this amazing event. Who here has seen the film Jurassic Park? Okay, quite a few of you. So I guess you know that in this film, scientists create from dinosaur DNA a dinosaur. Now let me tell you a scientific secret. It is not possible to create a dinosaur with only dinosaur DNA. To create a dinosaur, you not only need dinosaur DNA, you also need a dinosaur DNA reading machine. Okay, you need a dinosaur cell that is going to bring that DNA to life. In the same way, if you think about it, if I have a sunflower seed here, none of us, I don't think, would expect this sunflower seed to erupt suddenly and spontaneously and grow a sunflower. We know that we have to take the seed and we have to plant it in some soil. We have to give it some water, we have to give it some sunlight, we have to give it nutrients and many more things. And then the potential, the idea that is in this seed can flourish and become a sunflower. Now these two ideas, I think, can tell us a lot about how we innovate and how we can innovate to elevate. When I think about innovation, when I think about complicated things, I like to take a bit of a systems lens to that approach. But before we go there, I just want to pose one central question. How come, if we think that innovation is going to save our world, and we only have 10 years to do it, how come innovation hasn't already done that? As Nora said, we have been innovating for hundreds of years, decades. And yet, in the sum total of that innovation, we have ended up in the situation we are now, facing a climate crisis and a lot of social issues. Or put differently, why do we believe that the innovation of the next 10 years is going to be so fundamentally different from the innovation of the last 10 years? I don't believe that the innovators we've had so far have had any less good intentions or have been any less capable than the innovations we have here in this room today or at the conference in general. And yet somehow it hasn't added up to a system that actually works, to an economy that provides all the goods and services that everyone needs to live a fulfilled life, and where we're able to do that within the boundaries of our planet. So we need to think carefully about how this is going to happen. When I think about innovation and I think about complicated problems, taking a systems lens to these things I think is helpful. Many of us think that innovation is about the epiphany, the bright idea, the blinding insight, the maverick approach. But actually it takes more than that. From a systems point of view, we know we need at least three things. Firstly, we need pressure. We need something that is going to build up the energy or the demand and a case for change to make innovation happen. Secondly, we need diversity. We need something that is going to catalyze the change happening. This is essentially the different idea, the blinding insight, or maybe sometimes just random variation. And importantly, we also need an enabling environment that is going to make this innovation happen and is going to bring it to life and is going to allow it to manifest. This is the dinosaur DNA reading machine that we talked about, or it is the natural environment that we plant our seed in. So, for us, what is this environment? The innovations that we generally talk about, we are obviously launching into our economy. So understanding a little bit better about how our economy works is important. And this enabling kind of environment is critically important. Let me give you a couple of examples. Back in 1996, searching the internet was really tedious. It took a long time, and frankly, the results were not very good. So there was a demand, there was a pressure to make that better. There was an idea that happened, a variation, a diversification, if you like, where two PhD students came up with an algorithm that made this searching of the internet much, much faster and much better. But actually, they struggled for quite a long time to find an environment, to find a system that they could plug their idea into, and that was going to work. And it wasn't until the year 2000 when Google, as it was by now called, found that system which was pay-per-click advertising. And as you know, they plugged search into pay-per-click advertising, it went stratospheric, and the rest is history. Let me give you a second example, though. In 1970, the US government passed the Clean Air Act. And the Clean Air Act created pressure, amongst other things, to find less polluting cars. So by 1974, the Environmental Protection Agency in the US launched the Clean Car Incentive Program, which was basically a program calling out for ideas of how to make cleaner cars. And an engineer called Victor Wook submitted a Buick car that he had transformed and into which he had put a hybrid engine. This is in 1974. It was the first hybrid car to actually kind of fully work at scale. And he submitted it to the program. It outperformed all the tests. It was better than all the other ideas that were submitted. And an official at the Environmental Protection Agency said, I just don't think this technology is very appropriate for automobiles. It's not going to go anywhere. The Environmental Protection Agency didn't back it. It didn't happen. And it took another 25 years for mass-produced hybrid cars to come onto our roads. Again, as Nora said, imagine what would have happened if that had been a little bit different. So the enabling environment is critically important. It can make the difference between something happening or not, and the way it happens too. And for us, as I mentioned, this environment is essentially our economy. Our economy is what provides us with the resources, the investment. It provides us with the intellectual property rights, the contracts, the relationships, the people, everything to make it happen. It is what brings things to life. But somehow, it's not been adding up to the right thing. We're feeding ideas into this economy, and we've ended up in the situation that we're in now. Think about it. We have known for a long time how to create zero carbon houses. Why do we not have more of them? We've known for a long time, we can now, as we heard this morning, fly around the world without any fuel whatsoever. Why can we not even take short-haul flights in that way? We know how to create high-yield crops without the use of pesticides. Why is there not more of that around? We have designed 4x4 vehicles that can tackle any terrain anywhere in the world, and we use them primarily to drive our kids to school. Somehow, there's something wrong with this economy. So, let's think again from a systems point of view a little bit about our economy as well. Now, this becomes a little bit overwhelming, I tend to find, so I often use an analogy with a system which is a little bit closer to home. So if you'll indulge me for a couple of minutes and just think about this. Imagine the economy was like a human body. Imagine your body, like you sitting here, was an economy. You have trillions of cells in your body, all of which are individual organizations. They are producing the services and goods that your body needs to be healthy. Blood is pumping around all parts of your body. It's transporting energy, resources, raw materials. The nerve cells are conducting data and information. You kind of get the picture. If you were to run a health check, though, on this economy, what you would find, I believe, is that we are in quite an advanced stage of cancer. Now, this I realize is a somewhat shocking analogy and probably one that is quite personal to many of us sitting here in this room. But bear with me because I think there is something that we can learn from it. Think about it. Cancer, we have cells that are growing out of control. They're growing as fast as they can for growth's sake. They grow into tumors. These tumors in our body start pulling in a disproportionate amount of resources from all parts of the body, starving other parts of the body of the resources that they need. These tumors start infecting other cells around about them with the same kind of values, with the same kind of growth mentality. And they start transplanting themselves into other parts of the body completely as well, in a process called metastasization. And ultimately, if they start affecting the vital organs and systems of our body, the cancer can become irreversible. Now, I'm not going to explicitly draw all the parallels for you to our current economy, but I think you can probably draw those for yourself. But what this tells us about innovation is, of course, interesting. If we have an idea reading machine, if our system that we are feeding our ideas into is not healthy, then we can feed as many ideas as we want into it. We're not going to get the right outcome. If you feed a new idea into a tumor, it is just going to use it for more growth. If you feed a good idea into our economy that is primarily around growth and profit, don't be surprised if your idea gets turned into growth and profit. So how do we get out? How do we get out of this slightly depressing situation? Well, I think it's worth thinking a little bit about what is the root cause of cancer. Cancer develops like this. It develops through mutations to your genes. Genes are encoded in our DNA, as I'm sure you know, and genes are the blueprint for our whole body. And every single cell in our body, every organization in our economy, if you like, contains the blueprint for our whole body. And these genes are mutating all the time. A lot of the mutations make no difference whatsoever. Occasionally you have positive mutations, but occasionally you have a mutation which will bring us a little bit closer to cancer. Maybe it weakens the growth controls of this particular cell. More mutations might weaken them even more, and before you know it, the cell ends up essentially changing its purpose. Rather than its original purpose of producing, as it were, services and products that maintain a healthy body, it has switched to a purpose which is around growing for growth's sake. Now, the question, of course, is what is the equivalent of these genes in our economy? And these genes, I believe, in our economy, the equivalent are the underlying values, the very fundamental values that underpin how we run our economy and how we run our organizations. They are the stories we tell each other, the narratives that we have, the unquestioned assumptions that we make, and the worldview and the beliefs that we hold. And just like the genes in a tumor, these values have been mutating and changing over hundreds of years as well. And somehow we have ended up with a set of values underpinning our economy and our organizations that are allowing this cancerous behavior to flourish. Now, I believe that if we are going to create innovation that is genuinely going to make a difference in the next 10 years, we need to think at this very fundamental level about how we innovate these values. We need to change the actual good ideas reading machine as well as tackle some of the symptoms. In our body metaphor, we can't just be creating medicines that are tackling the symptoms of our illness. We need to be tackling the root causes. We need some gene therapy, if you like. And we need to also learn how to lead a healthy lifestyle. What does a healthy economy really look like? Now, this sounds like a very big and complicated and difficult thing to try and achieve. But the good news is, the very good news is that values are a little bit like muscles. This is shown scientifically. The more you use a value, the stronger it becomes. The less you use a value, the weaker it becomes. So this means if we can do innovation in a way that strengthens the healthy values that we have and doesn't use and weakens the unhealthy values, then actually, because these are positive feedback loops, change will happen much more quickly than we think. So for all you innovators out there, I have 3 fundamental questions. The first is, what is the purpose of your idea? I don't think it's good enough anymore to say, you know what, my idea is going to do some good and it's going to be very investable and it's going to be profitable. That's not enough. You need to ask deeper questions. What is the genuine intent of this idea? And what is the overall impact of this idea going to be? Is it going to make the economy as a whole a healthier place or a less healthy place? What is the purpose? Secondly, what is the power that I'm going to plug my idea into? We saw that the system that I'm using is incredibly powerful. And you need to ask yourself, what values do the people and the resources that I'm going to surround my idea with, what values do they have and what intentions do they have? So what is the purpose? What is the power? And thirdly, what is the paradigm that I am operating in? You can hear this in the language that people use. Are you and are those around you still talking about maximization, profit, growth, extraction, externalization, efficiency? Or are you starting to use new language, which is around distribution, circulation, balance, and resilience? If innovation is really going to save the world, we need to make sure that innovation happens at this very deep level as well. And I'm going to leave you by misquoting a well-known and much-loved prayer, which I first heard the systems thinker Donella Meadows misquote. And it basically goes like this: may we all have the energy to innovate with purpose in systems that are healthy, the courage to change the values of systems that are not, and the wisdom to be able to tell the difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please join me. We have time for a little exchange,
Sure.
and I'm happy to actually approach it the way you approached it, which is very interesting, the parallel with cancer, and how perhaps the innovation that we need is perceived as antibodies today. That's how you...
I think that's one way of thinking about it. Ultimately, we need to be able to think about changing the system at this very deep value, how we think about things, what our values are. This works at a personal level, at an organizational level, at an economic level. What do we think of as being success? What do I personally think of as being success in my life? What do organizations think of as being a success? And these things need to change. It doesn't happen overnight, but actually over time it'll happen. The values that we have now, they're not immutable. They have grown and they have changed over time as well. It is possible to change them, but we have to be a bit more conscious about how we do that.
And maybe I can ask you how, with your mission and your work with On Purpose, how you try to help people innovate while elevating.
Of course, yeah. Well, we run one-year full-time programs for people who want to change careers. And one thing essentially that we do with them during that 1 year is that we expose them to lots of different ways of thinking about doing business, of running organizations. So in some ways, we are exposing them to a different set of values. Mm-hmm. So we like to think sometimes that we infect them with these different values, we make them into vectors for a new economy, and that they will then kind of go out and start infecting all the organizations that they then work with as well. And over time, change happens through people. And people change because their values change. So we think this is one of the most powerful ways, even though it maybe doesn't sound like this, but ultimately this is one of the most powerful ways that we can make change happen.
And maybe you can leave us with a tip or an advice on how to be, or to become, the most innovative elevator. Not elevator as in lift.
Sure. Yeah, don't become a lift. That's a good question. I think a lot of it is about what you surround yourself with. The people you go and seek out, the ideas that you go and find out about, the networks that you create, and finding the people, having an intention of what you want to achieve, what you think is healthy, and then seeking out those organizations and those people that are trying to make that kind of thing happen. And that will give you the support, the challenge, and the inspiration to make real deep change happen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.